And at 10, Rainbow Raider. The reason that all the good guys are good is because of their morals. Because they channel their anger into something positive. Because they can control themselves. But what happens when a hero with powers like Superman is filled with a red-hot rage? Well, we saw it in Injustice. But someone able to cause those emotions, that person being Rainbow Raider, makes them pretty damn powerful. Rainbow Raider's power is derived entirely from their special goggles, okay? Which allows him to project solid beams of rainbow-colored light that he can either use offensively or as a slide for travel, and he can also coat people in certain colors of light to induce emotions, like blue for sadness, red for anger. There's also the Rainbow Raiders, a team of super color-themed villains that also have powers based on the color of their rainbow. However, just the ability to induce emotion by covering someone in light is enough to make Roy G. Bigelow pretty damn powerful. If all my rage came out and I had super speed, damn, people would have to like hide in fear, but it wouldn't matter because I would find them. And at 9, Zoom. I included a CW character on this list specifically for the guy in my DMs who told me to stop doing it. The CW version of Zoom was not exactly what everyone was expecting, although you have to admit he is one of the best and scariest villains in the Arrowverse to date. The sheer demonic look he had, especially with the suit, shook even me. However, thanks to the Velocity 9 that he was taking, Hunter Zolomon was incredibly fast, the fastest we had ever seen at that point. So fast even that in order to fight him, Barry had to take speed out of the equation. And during the final fight, Barry had to create a time remnant because he wasn't fast enough to stop Zoom with only one of him. It only got worse after Zoom kidnapped Wally and Barry had to give Zoom his speed in order to get Wally back. This only made Zoom faster. It gets even worse when in the final fight the Time Wraiths come out of the Speed Force and take Zoom, which changes him into the Black Flash, and then he gets supercharged by the Speed Force to become the living embodiment of death for all speedsters. Plus, I mean, this guy was able to create breaches at will to bring hundreds of metahumans over to Earth 1. That's pretty damn impressive. And at 8, Johnny Quick. Johnny Allen, alias Johnny Quick, is a criminal speedster from Earth 3. Together with his girlfriend and partner in crime Atomica, he was a member of the crime syndicate. Johnny Allen was a high-profile criminal, on the run with his equally criminal girlfriend. Cornered on the roof of Central City's Star Labs, Allen was struck by a bolt of lightning which shattered the roof. The duo fell into the lab space below, with Allen landing amid the chemicals that gave, presumably, Earth 1 Barry his speed. Something in this incident, probably the chemicals, granted him his super speed, and he went on to become a super criminal alongside his girlfriend, who had also been given powers. While his girlfriend took on the name Atomica, he took on the name Johnny Quick. The couple joined the crime syndicate at some point after this, and they ran through Central City, answering to no one, until one day the White House burned, around the time of Darkseid's incursion onto Earth Prime. The being that had destroyed Ultraman's Krypton came to Earth, and an alliance of supercriminals formed to find a way to safety. So yeah, it's basically just Barry Allen, but Earth 3. I say that's pretty overpowered. And at 7, Weather Wizard. Meteorological madman known as the Weather Wizard was a menace to both Barry Allen and Wally West's Flash, and one of the most overpowered supercriminals they've ever faced. First appearing in 1959's The Flash number 110, criminal Mark Martin armed himself with the Weather Wand, an advanced piece of technology which could control like atoms in the universe, some form of energy, okay? Martin took the wand from his deceased brother, a scientist who never intended it to leave his lab. With some modifications, it became a deadly weapon for the criminal, and at full power, the wand could summon lightning storms, rain clouds, or change the weather entirely. Whatever the weather was, Martin could use his mighty powers to rob banks and cause mass panic. A later reimagining of the Weather Wizard would see him instead granted the metahuman ability to control the elements without using the wand. And the Weather Wizard also appeared in the CW's Flash TV show as one of the many metahumans created by the particle accelerator explosion which gave Barry Allen his powers. However, on the show there are 2 versions, one of them appearing in the first episode which Joe West killed, and the second appearing in the 16th episode of that season, with the second one being the first's older brother, the Martin brothers, Clyde being the first one, and Mark being the second and the proper Weather Wizard. As Cisco said, he's been waiting to use that name since day 1. And at 6, Gorilla Grodd. Gorilla Grodd is a Flash rogue from Africa's Gorilla City. The original Grodd, which debuted in DC Comics in 1959, was a telepath who could control other animals and also had a form of mind control as well over humans. In the New 52, all inhabitants of Gorilla City had accelerated mental attributes due to the Speed Force, but Grodd was still the superior member of the species. On The Flash in the CW, Grodd was a very intelligent gorilla experimented on at Star Labs to try and create a super soldier for the US government. However, the torture and unethical treatment of the gorilla caused him to grow angry and evil, and he escaped seeking vengeance. Grodd had powerful mind control powers on top of superhuman strength and enhanced intellect, and at one point even combined with the Flash to be a psychopathic, telepathic gorilla with super speed. So I think it's safe to say that we should all be scared of Gorilla Grodd. Plus, his pop figure is pretty damn cool. Halfway through into number 5, Savitar. The fact that Barry Allen was able to just beat this whole Savitar thing from The Flash Season 3 will always escape me. I won't really ever understand how they actually ended up defeating a literal version of Barry from the future. Like, I get how they managed to do it, but it was still incredibly unrealistic, since technically Savitar would have known beforehand that the timeline was changing, since technically that should, in my brain, at least be how time travel works, but this ended up being how it works in the show, so that's fine, I guess. I don't see how it ever would have been possible to defeat a future version of the Flash without this though, but I know that he couldn't really die, since if he died, Savitar wouldn't be able to happen. A future version of the Flash is always going to be mega OP, okay? I said it. In at 4, Mirror Master. While Mirror Master never seemed like much more than a B-grade supervillain in Flash's rogues gallery, his power has made him so much more. Before he became a Flash version, the second Mirror Master, Evan McCulloch, was an assassin in Scotland and was already a formidable foe. However, once he got his mirror gun, he became insanely powerful. The mirror gun gives Mirror Master the ability to travel to an alternate dimension by entering and exiting any reflective surface. On top of being a significant pain in the Flash's side, Mirror Master has also fought Animal Man and was someone that gave him all he could handle. The CW used the Sam Scudder version, and he was only a minor villain, and then they kinda did Eva McCulloch for season 7, but honestly, even Sam being able to travel through mirrors like that, trapping the Flash in the mirror dimension for a time, this guy is certainly underestimated. Although I hope that they find a way to explore maybe some of his abilities in later comics or even the show. I'd like to see that. Getting close to the end, in number 3, the Shade. This Golden Age Flash foe is one of the most powerful and most terrifying, but he isn't always on the side of evil, luckily. First appearing in Flash Comics number 33 from 1942, this immortal conduit for dark energy was a formidable enemy for Jay Garrick and often caused problems the speedster with his weaponized shadows, kind of like my demons, causing me all kinds of problems as well. Initially depicted as a common criminal for the Flash to stop from robbing banks and menacing Keystone City in the 40s, the Shade was eventually reimagined as something much more sinister. Originally possessing a magic cane allowing him to control darkness, the revamped 90s Shade was given a real identity of Richard Swift and an endless supply of supernatural abilities. Returning to menace the hero Starman and eventually becoming his ally, the Shade used his powers of shadow manipulation, time travel, teleportation, and intangibility for both good and evil. The Shade also had his own dimension, the Shadowlands, where unwitting enemies would become trapped. And I think that having his own dimension earns him a spot in the top 3. Just saying. Penultimately, in at number 2, Red Death. Red Death is a speedster that is an evil combination of Batman and the Flash, which already sounds terrifying, but wait until you hear the story. The Bruce Wayne of Earth 52 started off fighting crime with Robin, but because, you know, of course, Robins kept dying left, right, and center. So, understandably, Batman got darker and darker, becoming more extreme with his methods. He started killing people, which honestly seems more realistic to me, aside from just being done fighting crime totally, which can't happen, otherwise they wouldn't have a story, right? This eventually leads him to Barry, who refuses to give Bruce his Speed Force powers, understandably because again, this time Batman's a psycho. So, Batman, using the various rogues' weapons to fight Barry, knocks him out. Once Barry was unconscious, Bruce tied him to the front of a cosmic treadmill modified Batmobile, I don't know how the hell he did that, and then drives them both into the Speed Force. Again, I don't know how that happened or works logically, but okay. You do you, Bat Marty, we gotta get back to the future, your kids are in danger. When entering the Speed Force, Barry and Bruce, again, somehow ended up fusing together into an evil Batman with super speed and a lust for killing. And while Barry's mind was trapped inside Bruce's body, so he could just watch. He then gets a visit from the Batman Who Laughs, who was part of the Dark Knights and whose goal was conquering the multiverse, and since he was a version of Batman who was psycho, he was like, hey you, come here, come with me, we're the same kind of. And finally, in number 1, Black Lantern Reverse Flash. The Black Lantern Corps is a group of various dead superheroes and villains alike who were raised by Nekron and each given a Black Lantern ring. This ring grants them power over death, and these rings are powered by the Anti-Monitor, as he is present within the Black Lantern power battery. Those raised by the Black Lantern ring are in essence resurrected to where they were before death, but their mind is warped to serve Nekron's purpose. Now they aren't really fully resurrected, but that's kind of like the best analogy that we have. Those with the ring have various powers, including a healing factor, aura recognition, which allows them to see powerful emotions, energy spectrum assimilation, which lets them extract the hearts of individuals they've slain, and use their last feelings to charge the central battery and their ring by 0.01%, because you know that's a lot, it's worth it. And they, much like zombies, can infect others by biting them. A bite from a Black Lantern will slowly kill the one bitten and then turn them into a Black Lantern upon death. Yeah, basically zombies with superpowers, so definitely not something to laugh at, especially when it's the man who killed Barry Allen's mother for the fun of it.
Coming in at number 10, we have the intelligent zombie Solomon Grundy. Inspired by a 19th century English nursery rhyme, Solomon Grundy was born centuries ago as a wealthy merchant, but after being murdered and having his body dumped in a swamp with mystical properties, he's now cursed to constantly be resurrected with slightly different properties each time. Usually being depicted as an incredibly physically strong zombie, Grundy's greatest power is his resilience to both magic and physical damage, meaning that every time he's faced by Batman, he needs to figure out a whole new clever plan to find a way to properly defeat him. Coming in at number 9, we've got to go with Clayface. When you're facing off against the world's greatest detective, being able to disguise yourself as anyone seems like a pretty useful skill to have. This alone would make Clayface a difficult foe for Batman to overcome, but combine that with the huge amounts of physical strength that Clayface possesses when he changes into his more monstrous Hulk-like form, and you have a rare mix of stealth and strength that keeps Bruce Wayne on his toes. This ability to manipulate others through careful mimicry allows Clayface to be far more intelligent than he appears. And while his skill as an actor comes across as funny in depictions such as the Harley Quinn TV show, it can be quite deadly under more serious circumstances. Coming in at number 8, we've got to go with the bladed assassin, Deathstroke. While in recent years, Slade Wilson has become more well-known for tormenting the Teen Titans, Deathstroke has also had many run-ins with the Justice League and the Dark Knight himself. With his brain operating at 9 times the efficiency of a normal human brain, Deathstroke is exactly the type of opponent that pushes Batman to his physical limits, with a complete mastery of every weapon he has at his disposal. Combine that with his Icon suit, which has been shown to even be able to withstand a punch from metahumans such as Superman, and this is a foe that Batman is always just barely able to outwit and defeat. Coming in at number 7, we have the malicious psychologist known as Hugo Strange. One of Batman's oldest villains, originally debuting only a few issues after the Caped Crusader himself in Detective Comics, Professor Hugo Strange was also one of the very first villains to ever figure out his secret identity as Bruce Wayne. While initially depicted as a typical mad scientist stereotype, more recent interpretations of the character have seen him as a devious manipulator, using his position of power as a doctor of psychology to examine the criminals of Arkham Asylum and scheming to gain power throughout Gotham City. It's this emphasis on mental ability rather than actual superpowers that makes Hugo Strange such an interesting villain to deal with, and the fact that he's consistently been able to figure out Batman's biggest secret in multiple different universes means that Hugo Strange just might be one of Bruce Wayne's biggest threats. Coming in at number 6, we have Bane, the villain who broke the bat. A brilliant tactical warrior who was raised from childhood inside an island prison, Bane's most notable act was when he systematically eliminated Batman's support system and eventually faced and bested him in single combat, shattering Bruce Wayne's spine over his knee. This victory over the Dark Knight was only temporary, but has still given Bane an intimidating reputation that he more than lives up to, going on to become a supervillain crime boss and proving that Bane isn't just about pure physical strength, but that he's also a ruthless and brutal strategist as well, even willing to kill Alfred Pennyworth just to emotionally shatter Damian Wayne. It just goes to show that you should never ever underestimate Bane. Coming in at number 5, we have Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin. The owner of the Iceberg Lounge, perhaps the most famous criminal hangout in all of Gotham City, the Penguin might look similar to his namesake, but is far more deadly in reality. While an impressive crime lord even without any superhuman enhancements, the Penguin is made extra deadly by the special umbrella he carries, which is always stuffed to the brim with different lethal gadgets to help him fight against Batman or any other supervillain that seems interested in starting a turf war. This unpredictability and Oswald's sanity not quite being all there make the Penguin an incredibly difficult opponent to read, hiding the fact that this crime lord is far more dangerous than he initially appears. Coming in at number 4, we've got the reality-warping Bat-Mite. A troublesome imp from the same fifth dimension as the Superman villain Mr. Mxyzptlk, the Bat-Mite is honestly more of a nuisance than a flat-out supervillain, often appearing just to try and challenge Batman or to see more of his heroic acts. Sending Bat-Mite back to his own dimension is usually a tall order given his complete reality-warping powers, but luckily the world's greatest detective is usually smart enough to outwit Bat-Mite and send him packing to where he truly belongs. However, fifth-dimensional beings have nearly limitless power within our regular three-dimensional universe, meaning that Bat-Mite should probably have a close eye kept on him in the future. Coming in at number 3, we have Arthur Brown, aka the Cluemaster. Not to be confused with the similarly themed Riddler, the Cluemaster is a former game show host who wound up turning to crime in order to pay the bills. The father of Batman ally Spoiler, the Cluemaster for a time seemed to embrace the role of being a second-rate supervillain, before it was eventually revealed that his status as a Riddler ripoff was actually intentional, and that organizing Batman's more underrated foes was his master plan all along to avoid detection. It's not often that a villain is able to temporarily outwit the Caped Crusader, and Cluemaster shows just how powerful the right man with a plan can become. Coming in at number 2, we've got Poison Ivy. Born under the name of Pamela Isley, Poison Ivy has always been dead set on protecting the green plant life of the planet Earth, and especially values it over human life. While well known for being able to control plants and utilizing poisonous kisses as a weapon, Ivy's powers may be beyond what she usually shows off. In a particularly noteworthy storyline, Poison Ivy was able to mind control essentially the entire human population of Earth through their consumption of fruits and vegetables. And while that's definitely some weird comic book logic as to how that would work, Batman was only barely able to defeat her by bringing her into contact with the one human being she cares about the most, Harley Quinn. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the Batman Who Laughs. In a dark alternate world where the Joker realizes he's dying and begins a mass killing spree of everyone in Gotham, Batman is forced to finally kill his iconic foe. Unfortunately, at the moment of death, Bruce Wayne is infected with a special brand of Joker venom that completely flips his moral compass, but leaves intact all of his intelligence and tactical planning. All of the chaos of the Joker with the brains of Batman, this supervillain is Bruce Wayne's worst nightmare come to life, and was able to become so powerful over the course of his war against the multiverse that he was only able to be defeated by a literal God mode powered Wonder Woman.
Number 10, J. Jonah Jameson. While JJ might not seem like the craziest supervillain out there, he has his moments, truly. Sure, he's just a guy who most of the time causes Spider-Man more grief in his civilian identity of Peter Parker as his loudmouthed, often angry and demanding boss. But if he gets his hands on robots, whew, watch out. JJ isn't at the level of world domination underestimation, but for the most part, Spider-Man fans generally just think of JJ as a nuisance, a menace, if you will, to Peter's everyday life. However, JJ has not only threatened Peter's livelihood and Spider-Man's reputation, but has also even gone toe-to-toe with Spider-Man himself, and even at one point took on She-Hulk. Typically, he's at his most dangerous whenever he gets his hands on the Spider Slayer robots or armor, which he often uses to more directly hunt Spider-Man or other heroes down himself, using muscles, or robo-muscles, I guess, as opposed to just the written word. And let's not forget that the written word and media itself are also way more powerful than we maybe give them credit for, both in the comics and in real life. Number 9. Sandman. The only thing that really holds Sandman back from being so deadly is his own disinterest in crime. In the end, Sandman often resents what he has become and even grows to resent being a criminal. There are even times in the comics when Sandman has tried to turn over a new leaf and go against his story as a villain, becoming reformed, preferring to stay neutral, lawful, and of course even at times teaming up and aiding heroes. This is really what holds him back though. That, and in some cases, the vacuum cleaner. Though really that shouldn't have been able to hold Sandman at all, considering that he can control the sand that makes him up, which means that, yeah, he can just kinda like move out of the vacuum cleaner, right? As sand particles. Sand is a powerful substance. It can cut you, it can get inside a wound, it's minuscule, it can get through and into almost any room or location, as it can pass through the smallest nooks and crannies. Sandman is also virtually immortal and can create duplicates of himself, allowing him to access a giant form by balling up all of these duplicates together. Now imagine if he did something like this, but on the scale of all of the sand in the world. Let's not forget that scientists have estimated that there are more grains of sand on planet Earth than stars within our universe. I know stars are bigger than grains of sand, but still, there's a lot of sand on this planet, like a lot of sand. Number 8. Morbius. Another villain that is really only curbed, I think, because of his often more heroic nature and sense of humanity is Morbius. Okay, so Morbius might not be a global level threat like we were talking about in the intro, but he's definitely more powerful than you might think. A lot of people probably don't think about Morbius much at all, I imagine, but like the lizard, if he's completely feral and unreserved, he's pretty dangerous. Recently in the comics, we saw that Morbius is back to being a fearsome, uncontrolled, ruled by his hunger, pseudo-science vampire. When he comes up against Ben Reilly's Spider-Man during the Beyond Spider-Man event. Ben struggled to fight against Morbius, and if it wasn't for some help from Beyond, he may have even died as a result of their battle. In the end, it took the Daughters of the Dragon duo, Colleen Wing and Misty Knight, together to take down Morbius, and even then, they may have only been able to do so because Morbius at that point was missing an arm. Dr. Michael Morbius can be quite strong when his power is completely unleashed and there's nothing holding him back. Number 7. Flash Thompson. Flash Thompson isn't a villain anymore in the comics, but he did start out as one. And from his humble beginnings, you likely would not have imagined that he'd become so powerful as a character. Flash Thompson started out as Peter Parker's schoolyard bully. He didn't have any powers, he was just kind of a jerk. Over time though, Flash became less of an oaf and eventually even became a friend to Peter. He then goes on to serve in the military, becoming a decorated hero, and even becomes a superhero after he becomes Agent Venom, teaming up with the Venom symbiote, who also has a villainous origin story. Sure, Agent Anti-Venom, aka Flash Thompson, probably won't be the guy threatening the entire world, because, well, he's a hero, but he definitely now possesses enough power to instead be a hero who could potentially save the world. And considering that he was just your average run-of-the-mill high school bully, you probably wouldn't have expected him to come so far. Number 6. Sauron. I've always felt bad for Sauron. Like, this dude does not get enough love when it comes to our boosting of supervillains here on the channel. I know Sauron seems kinda silly on paper, but he's also pretty diabolical and deadly when he wants to be. And if the person writing the character also believes in his prowess. Sauron can temporarily absorb mutant powers, is super strong, and somehow has functional pterodactyl hands that he can use to pick up weapons and items. I don't even know how he does that. That's nuts to me. Sauron is also an energy vampire, which means his powers are literally deadly. He needs life force energy to live, and when he absorbs life force energy, it can actually result in the death of his victim. Honestly, I think if he just had the right team up, he could be pretty unstoppable. Maybe with X-Men Green, he'll be able to do something crazy. I really want X-Men Green to be like a super villain team. Like kinda like Poison Ivy. Like, we're villains, but we're like saving the planet. Number 5. Sin Eater. Sin Eater saw a massive power upgrade recently. Initially, he was just a crazed man obsessed with absolving the sins of others through killing them. But But more recently, in Nick Spencer's run on Spider-Man in 2020, he became so much more than that. In issue number 46, we see Sin Eater with newfound powers to actually absorb and absolve the sin of villains, and with those sins, he would also gain their powers. This meant that the sky was almost the limit for just how powerful of a villain Sin Eater could become. However, after learning that he was being manipulated by Kindred and kinda used as a pawn, Sin Eater became distraught and ended up taking his own life. He would later be resurrected as a corpse, but we don't really know what happened to said corpse after he was brought back and the fight against Kindred sort of came to a close. He could still be out there somewhere though, and who knows, he could have some of his former hyped up powers. I doubt it, but even if he doesn't, he did have it at one point, so I think we should count it. It was pretty cool. Number 4, Chameleon. Chameleon is definitely a hero who deserves more love and respect, or at least more disdain if you love to hate the greatest villains. He was the first villain that Spider-Man ever faced in his own series. A lot of people don't think of shapeshifters or masters of disguise first when it comes to power levels, but the reality is someone who is really good at disguising themselves as other people can be one of the most deadly and unstoppable villains around. I mean, look at what Mystique managed to do recently in X-Men's Inferno series, or look at what Chameleon might seemingly be up to currently in Devil's Reign. Not only is Chameleon great at creating chaos and hurting others by disguising himself as them, but he also is pretty good at just hatching plans as well. Number 3, Kingpin. When it comes to Kingpin, we usually think of him as a threat confined to New York City. In fact, some people don't even think of Kingpin at all when it comes to Spider-Man. Over the years, Kingpin has become more synonymous with the superhero Daredevil, even though Kingpin's first appearance was actually in a Spider-Man comic, making his first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man issue number 50 during the original 1963 series. Lately in the comics, Kingpin has been setting his sights on a much more grand prize than just causing grief for New York, its citizens, and its heroes. He is taking on all of the superheroes based in the US that oppose him as he aims to run for president, using Kilgrave, yes, the Purple Man's powers, to encourage everyone to vote for him. Or else. Superheroes who do not ally themselves with Kingpin in this endeavor will face his wrath during Marvel's Devil's Reign event. Number 2, Mysterio. Another villain that often gets dismissed when it comes to Spider-Man's rogues gallery is Mysterio. Mysterio is a villain that is all smoke and mirrors, and illusions, which makes a lot of folks consider him to be not so real of a threat. Still, in the cinematic take on the character, we saw Mysterio almost completely fool the entire world, or while even being defeated, he kind of still did that. His plan here was to convince everyone that he was a hero and win them over to his side, and even despite seemingly dying, he actually still managed to kind of succeed. In the Old Man Logan universe, Mysterio is also the one behind defeating pretty much all of the X-Men by tricking Wolverine into thinking all of his friends were really supervillains, thereby getting Wolverine to kill the entire X-Men team and the school. Yikes. In other words, just because you think something isn't real doesn't mean that you shouldn't still fear it and that it can't still hurt you. A great illusion can be more powerful than actual action in some cases. Number 1, Dr. Octopus. Dr. Octopus is a villain that might be well respected among Spider-Man fans, but on a greater scale, he's not likely someone you think of when you think of a global level supervillain threat. But while he might not share the status of comic book villains like Doctor Doom, it doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve to instill that level of fear among the superhero community. Dr. Octopus might seem a bit silly with his haircut and his mechanical arms and his sometimes snazzy white suit and sunglasses, but let's not forget that he's actually a diabolical super genius whose brilliance combined with the sheer strength of his claws makes him a dangerous person to cross. Some might say he's just superior. Number 10, Vanisher. An old school villain who also almost single-handedly defeated the X-Men back in the day. Almost. So close. Well, actually, he kind of did defeat the X-Men team, but fortunately Professor X butt in to save the day. And he was only able to defeat Vanisher by wiping his mind and making him forget who he was and what he was capable of, which I think goes to show just how powerful of a villain he is. He was the first teleporter the team really encountered, proving just how crazy powerful teleporters are. Vanisher is also considered to be a super fast teleporter teleporter, and his power limits thus far have been pretty much undefined, even when he did resurface years later. I would consider him to be at a higher level though, just based on what I've seen thus far. He also was able to teleport himself safely just instinctually, even when teleporting to a place he's never seen or been to before, avoiding teleporting partially or fully into any solid objects, which of course could kill him, and which is like a great danger if you're a teleporter. You just teleport somewhere and now part of you's in a car and you're like, well, I guess I'm dead now. That's it. Number 9, Living Diamond. Okay, so someone I also think we need to talk about who needs some kind of redemption in the comics is Jack Winters, aka Jack O'Diamonds, or Living Diamond. He was one of the first X-Men villains whom Professor X saved Scott Summers from, thereby recruiting him to his X-Men team. Living Diamond's mutant power was believed to be radiation resistance, but he was also shown to be able to teleport short distances, had telepathy, and had a diamond form. Does that sound familiar at all? Telepathy with a diamond form. Somehow Living Diamond was way too easily defeated by a vibration beam which shattered him. I know Living Diamond is dead now and was undead at one point, but I really feel like considering how OP Emma Frost has become, Living Diamond should also get a second chance to prove just how powerful he in theory should be. I mean, if you got all that, how were you so easily defeated? Number 8, Arcade. Arcade is one of those villains who feels super ridiculous with his grandiose plans for Murder World, but in reality, when he actually manages to achieve plots like Murder World, he's actually quite scary. I mean, getting a sneak peek into just what a ludicrous and horrifying operation he'd run in Hellions really made me appreciate just how dangerous Arcade can be if he does manage to get enough hostages, that is, to control people into working with him so he can create his Murder World. In Hellions number 9, it's revealed that the trap Mastermind walked the Hellions, and prior to that Mr. Sinister, into was a trap laid by Arcade himself. Gasp, what a reveal. Arcade's plan was to use Sinister's Hellions as leverage to encourage Sinister to work for him. Sinister didn't really seem to actually care about the Hellions, and he basically just agreed outright, although Arcade still chose to forcefully remove some of his teeth for fun before putting him to work. He wanted Sinister to make clones for him for Murder World, and had his plan worked, it would have been a real horror show. However, Sinister made a counteroffer to Mastermind, and instead the two double-crossed Arcade. Still, that whole 3-issue arc made me believe in the power of Arcade. Like, if he has the right allies, he could be really crazy. I'm here for some sort of plot where Arcade tries to just turn the world into Murder World or something. If that hasn't happened yet, someone write that for me, please. Maybe I should write that down. Maybe I should write that. I don't know. Marvel, call me. I got ideas apparently. Number 7, The Blob. The Blob is a villain that we don't often get to talk about on these supervillain lists. He tends to fall by the wayside, but truly he's pretty unstoppable. And when he puts his mind to something, or when he puts his body to something, he's a terribly tough villain to defeat or even move. The Blob was one of the first villains to appear in the original X-Men series, and when he did, he gave the team of youngsters a really tough time. He also attacked them with a circus. The Blob actually didn't start out as a villain, but became one due to the influence of Professor X and the X-Men themselves. Also, just thinking back and the amount of times that the X-Men have fought circuses or been trapped in circuses, or that happens a lot. That's like a recurring theme. Initially, the X-Men attempted to recruit the Blob, but after the Blob refused to accept their offer, he managed to escape before Xavier could wipe his mind of their identities. This caused problems later on down the road, but really it was how the X-Men treated him after he refused to join, and kind of his own self-esteem, and then later his overcompensating sense of superiority that turned him into a villain. I wonder if the Blob actually could have been an ally if this whole scenario had just gone a little bit differently. The Blob is super strong, durable, and virtually immovable thanks to his ability to manipulate gravitational mass, which is pretty powerful. He also later gained a secondary mutation which gave him a liquid form, but he hasn't really exhibited a ton of control with his secondary power set. But he also has liquid form. That's on the resume of powers now. Number 6, Red Death. Also known as Kandra, Red Death currently has a very Scarlet Witch looking vibe going on, and I gotta say, I'm feeling it. And just like Scarlet Witch, she is not someone who you should underestimate. Kandra is part of the Externals, and while she isn't one of the most memorable of that mutant villain team, she's still someone someone who is super powerful. Technically, just being an external comes with a pretty big dose of power. The Externals, not to be confused with Marvel's Eternals, a different team entirely, are a group of immortal mutants basically. They have had various roles throughout history. One more prominent one that folks might remember Kendra from is her role as benefactress, when we learned of her history with Gambit and the Thieves and Assassins Guilds of New Orleans during Gambit's miniseries. In fact, that was actually where Kendra first was introduced in the comics, making her initial appearance in Gambit issue number 1 from the 1993 miniseries. Although the way they approach that introduction, you wouldn't necessarily maybe know that that was her first appearance, because she kind of shows up like, hey, you know me, I'm Kendra. And I'm like, do we know you? Who are you? But it's alright, she's pretty powerful. Number 5, Moira X. Moira was at one point powerful enough to have almost successfully wiped out all mutants. If it weren't for Mystique and Destiny, she would have succeeded. Even though she claimed during that past life that she only intended to create a cure to offer it to those who wanted it, Destiny knew that any mutant cure would essentially become weaponized and then forced on mutants, regardless of their own wants and desires. For those who haven't been reading along recently with the events of the current X-Men line of comics, it was revealed that Moira herself was actually a mutant whose powers were basically reincarnation in her own form. Basically, she dies and then she comes back to life as like a baby and lives her life again. But when Moira dies, she ends up being reborn as herself, but with all the memories of that past life. As such, Moira wasn't just a dangerous potential villain for the X-Men, but kind of the whole of 616, which also seems to be tied to Moira's current life, which I believe is her 10th life. Pretty crazy stuff. Moira is no longer a mutant after being cured in the 2021 Inferno series when Mystique shot her with a gun of Forge's design, which basically turns mutants into humans. But she still is a dangerous woman with a lot of information, and it was heavily implied that the creation of Krakoa was kind of all about eventually ridding the world of mutants over time, with Krakoa being like their last hurrah in terms of Moira's plan. Time will tell if Moira becomes more villainous, but I wouldn't be surprised if she did, just based on where she was heading in this story. And when or if that does happen, you better watch out. Danger is the Danger Room. The Danger Room is a villain who surfaced because they were basically being mistreated by Professor X, who had decided to ignore the fact that the training room had become sentient and was itself a technologically based mutant. Eventually, Danger decided, enough of this shit. It's time to get some sweet, sweet revenge. The crazy thing about Danger is, although we don't think of her too much, she really would be a pretty strong opponent to the X-Men, considering she trained them, and as such would know their strengths and weaknesses. In fact, I think that even is mentioned in the comics at one point. She was also considered to be an extinction level threat that caused Steve Rogers great worry in Heroic Age X-Men, which is kind of like a glimpse into his like tactical commentary diary. So if you wanted to read that, it exists. So despite not thinking about Danger too much, we all probably should, in case she ever decides to, you know, go the villain route again, destroy everyone, because she could probably do that. Extinction level, friends. Number 3, Mystique. Mystique is someone who isn't particularly or at least outwardly powerful when it comes to what she's capable of or her power set, and for this reason, many people have taken to underestimating her abilities. Here's why we'd advise against that. Inferno, issue number 4. In the newest Inferno series, it's revealed that while Mystique tried to play by Krakoa's rules, when she learned she wasn't going to get what she wanted from Magneto and Professor X, no matter what she did in the name of the Mutant Nation, she decided to take matters into her own hands, as Mystique so often does. Disguising herself as many different people, she was able to easily ensure that Destiny was resurrected, against the wishes of the heads of the Quiet Council. She also put into motion plans to make sure that Destiny would garner a spot on the Quiet Council, and then she almost was successful in enacting revenge on Moira X for keeping her love, Destiny, from her. Mystique here proves that not only is her power set OP, but really that her mind and sense of cunning is what makes her so dangerous, and definitely not someone to be underestimated. Number 2, Destiny. Destiny has to be one of the most underestimated villains in recent years in comics. We have seen her resurface as a considerably dangerous villain in the current X books, and I'm personally loving it. Destiny was dead for quite a few years and actually got to mostly stay dead for much of them. Her mutant power allows her to see potential futures. She can see things that might come to pass, and it seems as though the more likely the future becomes, the clearer her her vision of it is. She can also see more immediate futures when in the middle of a conflict. It was because of this power and Moira's personal grudge against and fear of Destiny that she remained unresurrected. But something you really shouldn't underestimate when it comes to Destiny is the power of love. Mystique was already told by Destiny before her death that if there came a time when mutants could be resurrected and they refused to bring her back, that Mystique should basically burn this new world to the ground. And Mystique's love of Destiny gave her the motivation to basically bring Krakoa to its knees with her machinations to not only return Destiny but also put her in a position of power. Precogs and love are a powerful mix. Number 1. Madelyne Pryor. Of course, I have to include the Goblin Queen. Madelyne Pryor is a woman who seems to easily be forgotten and shelved, which is surprising considering how great of a threat she posed in the original Inferno event. Currently in the comics, Madelyne Pryor is making a comeback, returning at the end of the Hellion series after being killed as part of the comic's first arc. The Madelyne Pryor that was killed was definitely feeling pretty evil and threatened to destroy the entire Hellions team before they even started. The returning Madelyne, who has been resurrected by the Five, is at least putting on appearances that she's more level-headed, but in reality it seems the dark side of her still bubbles just beneath. Madelyne Pryor has threatened the entire world with her dark rituals and demon pacts before, and she's a clone of Jean, so although she often gets forgotten and downplayed, she really shouldn't be considering just how dangerous and powerful she is, because Jean is also that and Maddie is also that too. She has the potential at least. Often people try to downplay Maddie because she's a Sinister created clone, but that feels very unfair to me. She's also got like a spark of the Phoenix Force in her, so should that count for something? I think so.
It's 10th birthday boy. Ray Salinger was a serial who operated in Gotham under the alias Birthday Boy, and he was actually the first costumed criminal encountered by Batman in his crime-fighting career. Introduced in Batman Earth 1 Volume 1 in June 2012, Birthday Boy is fascinated by young resembling his first kill. When in his killer mode, he wears a burlap sack with holes cut out for the eyes and a birthday party hat, usually in a room decorated like a birthday party. As a calling card, he left birthday candles where he stole away his victims and told his victims to make a wish that was decorated with the words "Happy Birthday Amanda," which is only creepier since we have Amanda here. And I feel like this guy is a representation of all of her DMs. That's right, I'm calling all of you nerds out. I think the sickest part of this character though was when he first started the whole Birthday Boy thing. He had been hired by Mayor Oswald Cobblepot to eliminate various enemies. In return, he was given girls from the streets or enemies of the Penguin as a reward. And at 9, Professor Pig. Professor Pig originally debuted in the alternate reality story of Batman number 666, which I love. He also debuted as a corpse, which I love even more. However, he was introduced as a recurring character in 2009 in Batman and Robin number 1. In Batman Reborn, Laszlo Valentine was an extreme circus mob boss until something turned him into Professor Pig, leading him to begin funding his scientific experiments by selling narcotics to the criminal underworld. All in all, he's an extremely disturbing villain, and that makes me think about why people aren't afraid of pigs as much as they are clowns, because if you ask me, this guy is freaking horrifying, okay? Professor Pig, if you couldn't tell, actually wears a pig mask, along with a butcher's apron, and what at times appears to be some form of hastily thrown together surgical outfit, like he got it from like Wish. Or he got it from like Party City. It's freaking weird. Also ends up brainwashing and controlling various people who he calls his Dolotrons. Like, I don't know what else there is to do other than just run away, so I'm gonna move on now. Although next time I have a pet pig in Minecraft, I know what I'm naming him. And at 8, Bootface. Okay, this guy's origin is the reason I wanted to talk about him. This guy's origin was simply him getting kicked in the face by Batman, and that's it, I'm not even kidding. Bootface was a thug working for Terminus. He got his name because of a boot imprint embedded into his face, which, like I said, is from Batman. Bootface first appeared in Batman and Robin Volume 2, number 10 from 2012, and honestly, it's one of the most interesting origins I've ever seen. And I mean this completely seriously. Everyone else has like a parent die, or was living in poverty, or was being abused. This dude just got kicked in the face and got so mad about it he became a supervillain. Even if he wasn't really like a good person beforehand, I mean, like, he was a thug and basically still is, but like still, just this time he has a ridiculous name to go with it, but hey, I still love it. And a man who is fueled by pure rage because he was permanently scarred by his attacker that ends up being a superhero, that's good enough for me. That's so funny. Bootface. And at 7, Mirror Man. Lloyd Ventures is a criminal who was detained in Gotham State Penitentiary. Using broken mirror shards, he distracts the guards long enough to escape from prison. Inspired by mirrors, I guess somehow, he becomes Mirror Man. Upon creating a machine that would enable him to see through objects, Mirror Man began targeting Batman so that he could find out his secret identity. identity. He literally discovers Batman's identity as Bruce Wayne by using a X-ray mirror, which is freaking nuts. Like, what even is that? How is that a thing? Mirror Man actually gets sent to prison before he can reveal the identity though, but because they want conflict, of course, he manages to escape with a plan to reveal Bruce's identity to the world, only foiled when Alfred, dressed as Batman, interrupts a press conference that Bruce Wayne was hosting, instantly disproving the fact that Batman is Bruce Wayne, because you saw them both in the same room. Even though that obviously Batman has partners. I don't know why people believe that. The public should have seen through this, okay? The people in Gotham City are dumber than we thought. I mean, they had Condiment King, so I guess they are dumb. Speaking of which, in its 6th, Condiment King. The Condiment King, created by Bruce Timm and Paul Dini for Batman the Animated Series, is a villain who makes use of various condiments, sometimes capable of causing anaphylactic shock. And his weapons are literally like those squeeze tubes for like ketchup and mustard, just on guns. It's hilarious. He's generally used as comic relief within the series, but still. He would make many condiment-based puns. For example, the big bad bat guy, I knew you'd catch up to me sooner. How I relished this meeting. You, the dynamic Dark Knight, versus me, the conceptual Condiment King. Come, Batman, let's see if you can cut the mustard. The Condiment King is seemingly killed after being betrayed and bludgeoned by the Human Flame with his own ketchup and mustard guns in the miniseries Final Crisis Aftermath run, which is a comic book, which already shows how he can actually be deadly aside from the whole anaphylactic shock thing. And that's again not taking into account any potential allergic reactions that he can trigger or blindness. I mean, ketchup and mustard are very acidic and can cause some serious damage if left unchecked. It just goes right into the eyes, you know? Plus, what if you have fries and he gives you mustard, okay? The only appropriate punishment for that is death. Halfway through into number 5, Joker's daughter. Unfortunately, it's not the Joker's biological daughter. That would have been an interesting story. This is just a girl who finds Joker's face, stitches it onto hers, and then goes berserk. So honestly, it could very well be his biological daughter. The only person that I think would commit such an atrocious act is in fact the Joker, so who knows? While maybe not being as prolific or accomplished as the Joker, Joker's daughter is definitely insane enough for this list. Even if I'm pretty sure a lot of people know she exists and not many people underestimate her, but hey, look, even if one person underestimates her and they watch this video, boom, it's enough. It counts, okay? Not to mention the fact that she also went by Catgirl, Scarecrow, Riddler's daughter, Penguin's daughter, Cardqueed, and Harley Quinn. Each incarnation also calling herself the respected super person's daughter, which I have to say is going to make a family reunion real awkward. But in actuality, she ended up being Dwella Dent, Two-Face's daughter, apparently, which is seemingly BS in my opinion, but we love a girl with a little flair, you know? And that flair will cause her to ruin Gotham City. In it for Clock King. Born William Talkman, Clock King spends his early years taking care of his invalid sister. One day he finds out from a doctor that he himself only has 6 months to live. Great. Despairing for his sister's future, he watches the timing of a local bank's vault in order to rob it, hoping that the money would provide for his sister after he was gone. His caper would have gone on successfully had he not tripped the silent alarm and been caught by the Green Arrow. The Clock King then goes on to join Major Disasters in Justice League, which becomes the Justice League Antarctica. This JLA includes G-Nort, who ends up saving the lives of the entire team. The original Clock King had no metahuman powers or abilities, although he is athletic and extraordinarily smart. He extensively uses clocks and time-related gimmicks to devastating effect. His primary weapon is a sword forged into the shape of a clock's hand that also doubles as a walking stick. And his skill in swordsmanship is such that even Batman himself could not defeat him in single combat. So watch out for Clock King. Getting close to the end of number 3, the Calculator. While the Calculator now seems to be an oracle of sorts for supervillains, the original purpose and MO of the Calculator is far more entertaining and interesting, at least to me. Noah Cutler began his criminal career by crossing the country and getting into fights with various superheroes on purpose, analyzing and recording their battle tactics to ensure that he couldn't be beaten again. Or in some incarnations, he would simply get beaten and then press a button on his chest to ensure that he didn't get beat again. Maybe that was taking in the information or something, like how Iron Man would just say analyze his fight patterns and then come up with countermeasures, you know? But either way, okay, do you know how insanely overpowered that could have been? Just being able to press a button and then boom, you're instantly basically immune to Batman or Robin or even Superman. That would be absolutely amazing. You do this enough times and you could just do whatever you want. And then other criminals start paying you to do their crimes for them because you guarantee success. That's freaking nuts. Okay, I wish they kept that Calculator. That could have been an even bigger threat than Darkseid if he kept going at it like that. This is why I'm the hero, because I would be unstoppable as villain. Penultimately, in at number 2, Lex Joker. Lex Joker was created when John Dee, also known as Dr. Destiny, collapsed the DC universe in half. First appearing in Superman Batman number 60 in 2009, Lex Joker is the combination of, you guessed it, Lex Luthor and Joker. Lex Joker hired Doomstroke and Terranado to destroy the Justice Titans. However, after the JTs allied with Batman and Superman, he hired 4 more mercenaries to create the Brotherhood of Injustice. Thanks to Terra, who had gone undercover with the JTs, they were able to attack the Justice Tower, and come on, let's be honest, if you have the brains of Lex Luthor and the complete insanity of the Joker, you're making one heck of an opponent. When you have 2 powerful forces in comics, at some point there's like bound to be a mashup of the 2 to create a larger, even more powerful villain. And Lex Joker is probably the scariest combination we could have gotten that wasn't like Joker and Doomsday or Joker and Darkseid. Oh god, Joker Darkseid. And finally, in at number 1, the Eraser. The Eraser was the chosen alias of Lenny Fiasco, who turned to crime after living his college days under constant mocking and taunting by his classmates. Of course, it's because, that's what college was like. No, that's high school, bro. Fiasco is a professional at covering the tracks of other crimes. For a 20% cut, the Eraser will erase the evidence of another crime. And honestly, I think that it's like the only job that anyone with the name Fiasco could have. The villain's power is a special helmet designed to look like a pencil eraser, because of course it is, that can wipe off evidence, even those that would be invisible to the naked eye, which is pretty damn cool when you think about it. After Batman posed as a villain to try to capture the Eraser, the villain told Bruce that he had became a criminal because Bruce had shattered his dreams of going out with Celia Smith. I'm not even gonna get into that, okay? Bruce didn't even remember her name, which made the Eraser angry. And I think that this is probably the absolute coolest concept for a supervillain, because in all honesty, if this guy wasn't an idiot, he could have ruled the world. Like, just straight up, this guy would absolutely ruin any and all investigations and then turn the tides of trials. This guy could have ended up being just like a shadow government in himself.
Number 10, Scarecrow. While Scarecrow didn't specifically take out the Hulk, he did take out the person who is often known as the Hulk in the comics, Bruce Banner. While Bruce Banner was traveling the countryside, he found himself drawn to a town via missing persons reports, a town that the villain Scarecrow just so happened to be tormenting. Hence why, people were going missing. The Scarecrow had taken up residence in the town's movie theater, Emerald Cinema, and used the townspeople's greatest fears against them by forcing them to watch them play out on the movie screen. When it came to Bruce, his greatest fear that he, as the Hulk, would destroy everything was used against him and was so horrifying that it actually killed him. Fortunately, this happened during Immortal Hulk Time of Monsters issue number 1, and as is established in the Immortal Hulk series, when night fell, the Hulk returned, and this time around, Scarecrow was no match for Bruce's vengeful green alter ego. So while initially it may have appeared as though Scarecrow was more powerful, in the end he was proven to be no match for the Hulk's true rage, which is why we're ranking him lowest on this list. Number 9, Circus of Crime. The Circus of Crime managed to best the Hulk in issue 217 of The Incredible Hulk back in 1977, although this isn't the only time that the Circus of Crime would torment the Hulk. Here the Hulk ends up befriending a circus, not the Circus of Crime, but instead the Circus of Lost Souls. However, the Circus of Crime ends up being in pursuit of the Circus of Lost Souls because they want their most beautiful member, Miriam. It turns out Miriam is a sea nymph, or siren of the sea if you will, who the Circus of Crime's ringmaster hopes will be able to lead them to treasure. The Circus of Crime successfully catch up to the Circus of Lost Souls and capture them, including their newest ally, the Hulk. The Hulk ends up being hypnotized by the ringmaster. However, while he is defeated by the Circus of Crime here, Hulk ends up fighting back later in this same issue. And when the ringmaster attempts to hypnotize Hulk again, due to his rage at Miriam being in danger, Hulk is actually able to resist being hypnotized this time around. In the end, he saves Miriam and is able to return her to the sea. Still, this wouldn't be the only time the Circus of Crime would cross paths and threaten to defeat the Hulk. Weirdly enough, Circus of Crime. Not one of the most powerful teams you'd think of, but hey, they got a leg up sometimes on Hulk. Number 8, Wolverine. I know what you're thinking, bub, but wait a minute, Wolverine isn't a villain, and while usually I would agree with you, in this instance he actually kind of was. And if you consider the Hulk and Wolverine's first meeting and fight in the comics, Logan's first appearance there made him appear initially as more of an antagonist. But the fight I actually want to focus on between these two is when Wolverine was made to become Apocalypse's Horseman of Death and faced off with the Green Giant. While Wolverine also didn't technically trounce Hulk completely, being given the option to behead him but ultimately not following through, he still won the fight technically in issue 145 of Wolverine and could have even killed the Hulk. Well, at least, momentarily. As now we know the Hulk is actually immortal. In the end, Wolverine's hesitation would allow the Hulk to smash Wolverine and escape. Although, thanks to Wolverine's healing factor, he would also quickly recover. He gets smashed a lot in that fight actually, and he's constantly like, I'm better, I'm good, I'm Wolverine. Rah! Number 7. Bi-Beast. Bi-Beast is a weird creature. He first appeared in The Incredible Hulk in issue 169, where he actually beat the Hulk so hard that he caused him to transform back into Bruce Banner. The Bi-Beast is a very strange villain. He is an android with 2 heads, one with knowledge of fighting and war and the other with knowledge of culture and civilization. He was created by the Bird People, which were once an avian race that were related basically to the Inhumans. They ended up dying out, but the Bi-Beast lived on. Their creation. He forces Bruce to fix the once glorious, now failing machines of the Bird People's once great city. Bruce eventually would transform back into the Hulk and escape the Bi-Beast when other villains came to attack that city, but he was still bested by the Bi-Beast initially, so that is important to note. And later on in the comics, a second Bi-Beast would appear and attempt to torment the Hulk during his adventures pretty much regularly for a period of time. Bi-Beast, one that we have all forgotten. R.A.P. Bi-Beast. Number 6. Lord Armageddon. Lord Armageddon, or Lord Armageddon, is a cosmic warlord who rules over the Trojan Empire as their king. He had beef with Hulk because he blamed him for the death of his son Trauma, or Trauma. I'm just gonna call him Trauma, but just so you know how it's pronounced in the comics. That's how it is. Armageddon proved powerful enough to handily defeat the Hulk in his own book, An Incredible Hulk, which was also where Lord Armageddon made his first appearance in issue number 413, starting off, of course, with a bang. However, when he forced the Hulk to engage the device that would resurrect his son Trauma later on, and Armageddon saw that the Hulk was not reluctant at all to basically do so, Armageddon felt respect for the Green Behemoth. Instead, he opted not to kill the Hulk thanks to this newfound respect. But, that was a pretty close one, because Lord Armageddon's pretty nuts. He's a 90s villain, so you know how it is in the 90s. People went crazy. Lots of cool, crazy villains from that time. Number 5. Namor. Namor is more of an anti-hero than a straight-up villain, but he's done plenty of villainous things in his time, and even has teamed up with the likes of Fantastic Four villain Dr. Doom, and has for years been known as a major antagonist to Black Panther, with Namor's Atlantis and Black Panther's Wakanda often being engaged in war or other such hostilities. And while many people don't think of Namor as being a powerhouse, he really is, and he deserves to be thought of that way because he is a powerhouse. Especially if you try to fight him while he's in his underwater element. Don't try to do that. And yet, the Hulk has done that time and time again. And guess how that has worked out for him? Well, not very well. Pretty much every time these two have gone up against one another, Namor has been the victor, with Hulk standing not much of a chance fighting Namor underwater. However, it should be noted that Namor and the Hulk have also been powerhouses together when teamed up. That is, as long as they can remain united and not get distracted by thoughts of when and how best to, betray each other, which also happens a lot with them. Happens a lot with Namor in general, I think. Actually. Number 4. Umar. Umar is the sister of Dormammu. She is known as a powerful sorceress and villain who sometimes works alongside her brother when she's not busy devising her own devious plots. She proved her power over the Hulk in a less conventional way. Their battle against one another that I'm focusing on here had less to do with fists flying and more to do with stamina. At one point, Umar gets her hands on the Hulk, with him having been trapped in the Dark Dimension during his time on the Defenders team. Instead of tormenting the Hulk, she sees potential in him and decides she'll make him her servant and possibly her paramour. The two get steamy, but Umar wins their tussle as the Hulk's passions are too short-lived for her, and he passes out after a few brief minutes, leaving Umar unsatisfied and, well, pretty unimpressed, and proving that at least her appetites are far more powerful than the Hulk's. Number 3. Dormammu. Of course, even when the Hulk was captured during the first Defenders story arc of the 2005 volume that we were just talking about, Dormammu was the mastermind behind that plan, with Umar joining her power to his. So although she ended up holding Hulk prisoner and besting him in romantic combat, Dormammu was the one who successfully laid the trap to capture the Hulk and the other Defenders, defeating them, at least temporarily. I mean, the one thing with villains being more powerful than superheroes or defeating them is that in the end, we do have to follow the formula of the hero's journey, because that's kind of what superhero stories are. So while the hero may be forced to struggle and persevere against great odds, in the end, they must always come up at some point victorious. Unless, of course, we are exploring some darker reality reality that exists within the multiverse, but the mainstay will pretty much always come back around to a victory for heroes like the Defenders. Number 2. Thanos. Thanos beat Hulk hard during Infinity War, which narrative-wise really helped to establish where Thanos fell in terms of his power ranking in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which if you hadn't guessed, turned out to be pretty high up there. It was less of a fall and more of like a just crown. Thanos is the top, at least at that time. Especially when he had the Infinity Gauntlet in tow with any, and especially if with all Infinity Stones on it. Thanos during Infinity War runs into the Hulk right near the beginning as he is traveling with the surviving Asgardians following the events of Thor Ragnarok. However, these Asgardian survivors won't be surviving for long, as even when the Hulk tries to stand up to Thanos and fight back against him, he is quickly and easily defeated. As Hulk hurtles back to Earth when he lands as Bruce Banner in the New York Sanctum Sanctorium, his desire to warn others of Thanos' arrival is extremely urgent, and with good reason. I mean, he really just got his butt whooped there, so yeah. Number 1. Doctor Doom. I mean, of course Doctor Doom could beat the Hulk. Doctor Doom could probably beat, well, just about anyone. He's so popular and so powerful and so smart. The then gray-skinned Hulk and Doctor Doom faced off in issue 320 of the Fantastic Four. Here, Doom uses his wits to take control of the Hulk, attempting to use the brute force of the hero for his own means. In this case, what Doom wanted was to retake control of his country, Latveria. In order to gain the Hulk's help, he tormented him by scrambling his brain impulses, until the Hulk finally agreed to hear Doom out, and following that, Doom used his manipulative skills to convince the Hulk to help him take back control of Latveria from the FF and go toe-to-toe with the Thing. Which honestly, I don't even know if you really need to make Hulk do that. I feel like you just need to be like, you should fight the Thing, and he'll be like, well, I do that a lot. We do like to fight. Number 10. Ares. Ares was the one to actually wound Darkseid in the DCEU in Zack Snyder's cut of the Justice League. Of course, this was back before Darkseid was calling himself Darkseid, back when he was U-Axis, and back when he was less powerful. But he was still a version of Darkseid, albeit a younger one, and Ares still beat him fair and square in a one-on-one combat. In fact, he beat him so badly that he was forced to retreat, and eventually his armies fell and the whole invasion was forced to retreat as well as a result of his defeat. Now, it is important to note that in our flashback to this moment, we also see that Darkseid was likely weakened not just by Ares, but by the armies of Earth prior to Ares' attack on him. So yeah, it was kinda one-on-one, but before that it was like a bunch of people on one. However, Ares is also the god of war, so when going toe-to-toe with him, facing armies as well is just kinda the norm. Number 9. Solaris. Solaris might stand a chance against Darkseid considering he's literally just a sentient sun. Typically his beef is with Superman, but if there were a reason for Solaris to take on Darkseid, I'm sure he'd stand a pretty good chance of beating him in a fight. It would be his intense radiation and laser beams versus Darkseid's Omega beams. Considering that Solaris is also an adaptable villain who can scan and process an attack and then use that information to create a powerful defense against it, this also means there are very few attacks that happen to be powerful enough to destroy him, unless you can like destroy him outright with that first attack. This is also why Solaris makes such a great recurring villain. Maybe Darkseid would beat him even the first time around, but Solaris would likely still survive because he's just so resilient and indestructible, and he'd likely return years later for a rematch. Number 8. Necron. Necron is the embodiment of death, an extra-dimensional being who often seeks to conquer the universe. He has attempted to do so a few times and failed, but during Blackest Night we saw him come fairly close to accomplishing his goal. If not for the presence of the White Lantern, he would have likely succeeded. During that event we also saw Necron's power level boosted, turning him into a massive threat to not just Earth but all of the universe. The other thing is that Necron is a constant and as such can't really be permanently killed at any point. As long as death exists, he technically must exist as well. Even without the boost to his power levels that we saw in Blackest Night, Necron has still managed to take hits from the Anti-Monitor without so much as flinching. That's just how untouchable he is. Number 7. Superboy Prime. Just because Superman can't take Darkseid alone, it doesn't mean that another version of the character couldn't stand a fighting chance. Superboy Prime, or Superman Prime as he is often referred to now, might not have the physical strength, but it could be possible that he could manipulate reality to make Darkseid weaker, or even cause him to just not exist. How? With just a punch. There was a time in the comics where Superboy Prime was shown to be so strong that he punched reality, splintering it and in essence reshaping it. If Superboy Prime has the power to punch retcons into existence, existence, what can't he do? Number 6. Volthoom. Volthoom is the very first Lantern who, after receiving the very first Lantern ring from the Guardians of the Universe, turned dark, losing control of all the emotions within himself. Or maybe he was a little dark even before that. He killed millions of people and enjoys sowing discord and creating chaos. At one point, he also almost succeeded in taking hold of the universe and reshaping it in his own image. It took the collective power of Parallax Sinestro, Necron, and a Black Lantern, Hal Jordan, to stop him. He can warp reality, manipulate time, and has increased durability. He's taken on an army of Black Lanterns all by himself, and at one point was powerful enough to hold the universe in his hand. I'm pretty sure if there is anyone who could take on Darkseid solo, it would be Volthoom. Number 5. Starro the Conqueror. Starro is a frightening enemy. Not only is there the potential for Starro to simply take hold of Darkseid and use him as a pawn, which we have actually seen pictured in the Future State Justice League series in issue 1, but you can have a Starro that could be up to thousands of miles across. Their sizes greatly vary, meaning that you could have a Starro simply capable of crushing Darkseid if it wanted to. Though honestly, taking his mind hostage and using him as a weapon for its own purpose is a far more terrifying prospect. Not just for our heroes, but I imagine for Darkseid as well. Number 4. The Darkest Knight. I never thought I'd consider Batman Who Laughs to be such a powerful threat, but after he took the brain of final Bruce Wayne, who basically had the powers of Dr. Manhattan, he became one of the most powerful beings in the universe. True, he was defeated by Wonder Woman, but if we can imagine a scenario outside of Dark Knight's death metal, where with his newly acquired power he squared off with Darkseid, it would be easy to see how he could win against that villain. With Dr. Manhattan's abilities, there would be almost no feat of power too great for him to accomplish. In his Darkest Knight form, the Batman Who Laughs became invulnerable and immortal, which would also make it very hard for Darkseid to not only wound him, but defeat him as well. Number 3. Anti-Monitor. Many consider the Anti-Monitor to be one of DC's greatest threats. It usually comes down to either Anti-Monitor or Darkseid when you ask fans who is the most powerful and fearsome antagonist of the DC universe. The thing with Anti-Monitor is most of his stories have included threatening not just multiple worlds, but entire multiverses. So compared to Darkseid, he's generally on another scale. And not just in terms of threats and power, but also just in terms of actual size. Darkseid is typically shown as being an intimidating height, but only really in comparison to other superpowered beings and humans. He's like anywhere from a few feet taller to double their size. Anti-Monitor, on the other hand, is generally depicted as being hundreds of feet tall. So unless we are giving Darkseid a major boost to his size, Anti-Monitor could just squish him like a bug. Of course, we did give Darkseid a major boost to his size when the two fought, but even then Darkseid ended up dying. Of course, it wasn't Anti-Monitor who caused his apparent death, but it still happened while they were fighting, so hey, I'm counting it. Number 2. Perpetua. Perpetua is also likely a character who could take Darkseid, considering that she has destroyed entire alternate Earths before and even managed to break the Source Wall. Pretty impressive and terrifying stuff. Perpetua, for those who don't know, is an agent of the Source who went rogue. Initially, she was on a mission of creation, but instead decided to turn to the side of chaos and destruction, with a plan to remake the multiverse in her own image. Some might think that Perpetua isn't so scary or strong, considering she has only been shown to destroy a single universe at a time. But in reality, when we saw her wreaking havoc in death metal, she was not yet back to her full strength. If Perpetua was back at her max strength of power, there's no telling just how much destruction she could bring about within an instant. Number 1. Trigon. In the animated film Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, we saw just what Trigon was capable of in the fight against Darkseid. And I know what you're thinking, how is Trigon more powerful than Perpetua, Amanda? But I'm giving this one to him because of this fight. Raven accidentally lost control of Trigon and set him loose on Apocalypse. Trigon in the film at least was shown to be strong enough to match Darkseid in power, if not beat him. Initially, that's because Trigon possessed Superman, using him as a host to fight Darkseid. But afterwards, Raven and Constantine team up to give Trigon back his own body, realizing that he is the key to defeating Darkseid, giving them enough time to escape back to Earth and enact Cyborg's plan to destroy Apocalypse. When Trigon gets his body back, he poses a very real threat to Darkseid, to the point that at one point Darkseid attempts to basically run away, but Trigon does not let him. As Apocalypse is destroyed, so are both of the villains, as Trigon holds Darkseid back, preventing him from fleeing. fleeing, which I love. I love that they fight and then Darkseid's like, I'm getting out of here, and Trigon's like, oh no no no, we're going together. Number 10, Cul Borson. While the Serpent is not as powerful by himself, like Darkseid, he doesn't usually come alone. During Fear itself, he recruited his own allies when he activated the hammers of the worthy, who found their own hosts, causing global chaos and destruction, and giving the villains and corrupted heroes who wielded those hammers immense power. Cul Borson is Thor's uncle, who was imprisoned by his own brother Odin, and craves power that he claims was rightfully his before he was locked away. Fear gives him strength, and while Darkseid might not be afraid of him, there are plenty people on Earth who could power him up with their fear were he to return. Inevitably, Thor did defeat the Serpent, but it cost him his life at the time, and all the heroes of Earth were still kinda needed to come together in the fight against all the fear that Cul Borson's return had unleashed on the world. Number 9, Vulcan. Vulcan has a great darkness that seems to be permanently lurking within him, which generally leads to him going berserk when it comes to how he approaches attacking, or more specifically, decimating, usually, his enemies. Vulcan is known as Gabriel Summers, the youngest Summers brother of the three. In the past, he has also been known as the Emperor of the warrior race known as the Shi'ar, and is an Omega level mutant. When it comes to energy manipulation and generation, he's probably the most powerful of the three brothers, just based on his sheer power levels alone. Vulcan even went toe to toe with one of the most powerful characters in Marvel, Adam Warlock, who at the time had joined up with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and yeah, Vulcan kicked his butt pretty effortlessly, looking super evil all the while, by the way. Number 8, Doctor Doom. Doctor Doom definitely has the prowess to defeat Darkseid. While he might not be powerful enough initially to defeat Darkseid, Doom is well known for his determination and for going to great lengths to achieve things that most would tell him were basically not possible. He's kind of like the person that also comes in the Marvel Universe to solve problems that seem otherwise unsolvable, even when we have like all of the geniuses on it. He has masterful plans, and I believe that if Doom had to go up against Darkseid, he would find the power that he needed to defeat Darkseid. We've seen him take power from plenty of insanely powerful people in comics and video games before, like Kilgrave, Odin, the Beyonders, Scarlet Witch, and Molecule Man. I'm just saying, people are definitely going to be like, yeah, but Doctor Doom isn't already at that power level, and I'm going to be like, yeah, well, Doctor Doom's great, so he wins, that's it. It's all coming up Doom, baby. Number 7, Enchantress. Enchantress is vastly powerful when it comes to her magics. She's one of the most powerful magic users in all of Asgard and within the Marvel multiverse. And even though she's a magic user, which are typically known for being pretty squishy in general, she is surprisingly strong because she's also Asgardian. Enchantress has been shown to seduce a number of men with her charms and beauty, except for those with the strongest will. She is trained with various Asgardian magicians and even was Carnilla's student at one point. She can conjure up magic strong enough to destroy a god, though weirdly not strong enough to destroy Vision. Android loophole, I guess. She's easily defeated other immensely powerful magic users, and I'm sure that if she and Darkseid faced off, she'd prove that Enchantress should never be underestimated in battle. Number 6, Genesis/Annihilation. Genesis is the wife of Apocalypse, and as such will be his stand-in for this list. While there are some who compare the all-powerful might of Darkseid and Apocalypse to one another, also, I mean, they look pretty similar just in terms of character design, there is a character even more powerful than Apocalypse who I believe, based on the comparison of DC and Marvel's characters, could pose an even greater threat to the new god. That, of course, is Genesis. We met Genesis and came to know her as a foe over the course of the Ten of Swords event during the Otherworld tournament. She was one of the chosen champions of Araco who fought in that tournament. Genesis received a power-up as the avatar for the Elder God of Amenth, known at the time as Annihilation. But even without her mask and without that title, Genesis was still shown to be an Omega level mutant more powerful than her husband. So if we're comparing Darkseid to Apocalypse, I think Genesis is, I'm just saying, I think she might be more powerful. Number 5, Gorr. It's all in the name for Gorr. Darkseid is known as a new god, and Gorr is the God Butcher, so I think you can imagine how this might go down. Gorr fights wielding the all-black Necrosword, a symbiote and weapon created by Null. Gorr can use this weapon to devour his enemies from the inside out, basically. It's pretty gross. This kind of inside out attack with the all black has been shown before to be powerful enough for him to defeat even an immortal Asgardian hero like Thor, and fairly easily too. What's more, the all black that Gorr wields is also powerful enough to slice through the sun and the moon as well. Now that is one sharp and deadly blade. When armed with the all black, Gorr also becomes virtually immortal, as though he weren't resilient and strong enough on his own. Even if you kill him through the all black, he can basically return, making him indestructible and pretty much undefeatable. How can you defeat someone if you can't actually get rid of them, you know what I mean? I don't know. Number 4, Galactus. I mean, let's just talk about the sheer size of Galactus to begin with, and already we're making a pretty good case for him taking the fight, in my opinion. Galactus is the devourer of worlds, and Darkseid could be the inhibitor of a world that Galactus would end up destroying. Even when Galactus is hungry, his strength is pretty great. He has been shown as being able to engage in a fight with the Phoenix even while in such a state, which, I mean, I wouldn't expect him to win because Phoenix, but I also think that is immensely impressive given how powerful the Phoenix and Phoenix Force is in general. Number 3, Null. Null is shown as being one of the biggest bads currently in the Marvel Universe with the King in Black event, and he has proven time and time again just how hard it is to stop him. He's relentless, doesn't give up, doesn't back down, and is very hard to actually kill or injure. Like Darkseid, he also likes to raise worlds, but he has symbiotic dragons and is known for being one of the galaxy's oldest evils. Null is basically darkness incarnate, so while I believe that watching a fight between these two would be very exciting and interesting to read, in the end I would personally be betting on Null to come out victorious. Number 2, Dark Phoenix. Obviously, Dark Phoenix is one of the most powerful villains we've ever seen in the Marvel Universe, and as such is definitely someone who could mess up Darkseid. Dark Phoenix has destroyed entire worlds and could reshape all of reality if they wanted to, especially when we're talking about the powerful marriage of the Phoenix Force and its often most desired perfect host, Jean Grey. When Jean goes dark, you definitely want to watch out. And even Darkseid should be shaken in his boots if that version of Phoenix and Jean comes a-knockin'. I mean, we should all be shaking in our boots, really. Number 1, the Beyonder. Initially, the Beyonder wasn't even from the Marvel multiverse that we have come to know, but another multiverse completely separate. In that multiverse, the Beyonder was everything, and everything was him, making him pretty much the god of that multiverse. A hole into our multiverse was created when Owen Reese experienced the accident that turned him into Molecule Man, and it was through this hole the Beyonder became aware of this Marvel multiverse, and basically decided ultimately to come on over and to mess with it. At least that was the initial backstory. Later on his story would be altered somewhat and we learned that there was actually an entire race of Beyonders, but either way the Beyonder remains one of the most powerful villains around at Marvel, especially in those older days, considering that he is beyond multiversal and can with ease, and even sometimes without even intention, destroy multiple realities and reshape multiverses.